Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Welcome back to r/ProRevenge, where you'll hear stories about people getting what they deserve. Guys, in this episode, there's gonna be 5 revenge stories, with the last one being a little gross. Guys, I do hope you stay for the stories today, and hit that subscribe button for future revenge stories, if you aren't already subscribed. Let's dive in. I worked at a retail chain that sold pet supplies and products. When I started working there, it was great. Family owned, and everyone I worked with was fantastic. The owners eventually wanted to retire and sold the small chain to an investment group. Once the investment group took over, almost all but few employees were let go, forced out, or just quit. I hung on for a little while longer before I got promoted at my other job. So, new company brings in a new manager to my store. My store was the top performing store in the entire chain, bringing in about $10,000 to $12,000 a day on average. It was always more on the weekends, and especially around the holidays. The new manager is a Mr. Company man. Company told him that they only want employees around for 2 to 3 years, and myself and 2 others had been there for 10 plus years. So naturally, he began ruffling feathers and giving us all a hard time. Unfortunately, he decided on me first. Mr. Company man found out that I worked 2 jobs. The 2 jobs are not related fields, so there was no chance of any conflicts of interest on my end. However, my second job requires me to work nights and weekends. When Mr. Company Man found out, he demanded I work nights and weekends there, so it was fair for everyone. I didn't work nights and weekends there because I was the store's only OSHA certified forklift operator, and deliveries did not come at night, they came weekday mornings, every day. Mr. Company Man did not want to hear that, and told me I either had to work nights and weekends, or that would be my last day. I told him, don't threaten me with a good time. I suppose today's my last day then. I was pretty pissed off about that, but it's not a big deal now. It ended up being the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I went home early and didn't finish my shift, but when I got home, I decided to call my local OSHA inspector and report them for not having a certified operator on staff, as well as numerous other hazards. Needless to say, they lost close to 3 weeks' profit from all the violations that the inspector found. I was surprised they even showed up. In my state, the inspector will call you back after an inspection and tell you if your claims were founded or not. Mine were, and Mr. Company Man got chewed out so bad that he ended up quitting. Oh, guys, so one thing I've learned from reading pro-revenge stories is this. If you own a company and you cut corners and do shady things to cut costs, you need to be extra careful whose toes you decide to step on. So I've worked for a few shady construction companies in the past where the employee's fired and decides to come back with a vengeance, both times costing my company thousands of dollars, and I'd always be laughing quietly to myself because they deserve it. They truly, truly did deserve it. This is not my revenge, but my mother-in-law's. My mother-in-law is a pretty well-off woman. She owns a large number of rental properties, and her husband have a huge house located just outside of New York City. It's got an indoor pool, a sauna, elevators, etc., and is well worth into the 7 figures, being only 5 minutes from downtown Manhattan. Sadly for her, her husband passed away, and she remarried and moved out of state. She put the house up for rent shortly after. So a broker approached her with 2 prospective tenants. The tenants were music producers and had some legit acts they worked with. One of them was the business guy, and the other was the talent. The talent I'll call Ben. The 2 were partners in the beginning, and the business guy made sure the rent was paid on time. He was legit and did not screw around. They used the house as a place for artists to chill out and work on their music. After a couple of years, business guy and Ben had some sort of a falling out, and business guy left Ben, and Ben stuck around. At first, he continued to pay the rent on time, but after a few months, it kept getting later and later. By itself, it's not the worst thing. Owning real estate comes with the territory, but he started to get aggressive and racist as mother-in-law kept insisting that she needed to be paid. Mother-in-law is not a mean person and values politeness and manners above all else. Finally, mother-in-law had enough and had him evicted. After the eviction, they went through the house and assessed over $100,000 in damage. Cigarette burns in the carpet, stains on the wall, pool filters and plumbing damage, etc. She took him to court, won, and had a lien placed on all of his property. Ben was dead broke at this point, aside from his home, and she did not see the point in trying to get blood from a stone, so she just moved on. So, fast forward about 15 years. Mother-in-law receives a notice in the mail that the bank is foreclosing on Ben's home. Because she had a lien placed on all of his assets, the bank was asking a judge to dismiss her lien so they could collect what they were owed from the sale of the home. Mother-in-law was obviously going to contest this, but then she got clever. She approached the bank and basically said, "Look, sell me the house at a fair market value, less what I'm owed, and you'll save on foreclosure costs, brokers, lawyers, etc. I have cash on hand and it's a win-win for everybody." The bank agreed and she purchased the house for almost 25% below market value. Mind you, that 25% was money she was owed anyway, but still, she didn't think she would ever see it again. Of course, given all of Ben's past behavior, she wasn't just gonna take the house without having him know who was gonna take it. She found out the day they were moving out and she stopped by. Ben had difficulty placing her since it'd been over a decade since they last spoke. But once he realized who she was, he basically cussed her out. She never said a word, she just smiled. She has since rented out his home to a lovely family with no issues. Guys, there is something so satisfying about an unplanned revenge that takes place over a decade later. I love that she stopped by and made it known that she was the new owner of his place. Absolutely brilliant. Back in my college days, several friends and I went to Lake Havasu, Arizona for spring break. Those of you who've been probably hung around the London Bridge Resort at some point. Next to the hotel area, there's a walking path that follows a canal which leads under the old London Bridge and then to the Lake Havasu itself. This canal allows people to park their boats within walking distance to the resort. One night, 3 of my friends and I went for a stroll along the path. During our walk, we heard some shouting, which went along the lines of, be cool, we're just leaving man, be cool." My group hung back for a bit. After a second, a group of guys came up. We asked them what was going on, and they said there was 2 guys in a boat. They were flashing people in the face with a spotlight and pissing them off, and then pulled out a pistol when confronted. We will refer to the guys in the boat as douchebags from here on out. So my group decided that we weren't gonna stand for this, and came up with a plan. We continued down the pathway to douchebag's boat and played dumb. We asked them, what are those guys so scared of? Being the smug, self-satisfied little douches they were, they said, those guys wanted to pick a fight with us, so I pulled my gat on them. It was actually an old .38 revolver. At that point, I knew this was gonna be easy. You see, one of the members of our group was a girl, a beautiful girl, a girl wearing a bikini and cut-off jean shorts. She laid on the dumb bimbo card and in no time had them eating out of her hand. She said, "I've never seen a gun before. Is it heavy? Do you have any more?" Those idiots handed her their gun to hold and said, "No, that's the only one." She then handed it to our buddy Jay, who's a 6'4", 280-pound wall of meat. And Jay threw that gun to close to 250 feet away, into the canal, which made a very satisfying thunk when it hit the water. Both douchebags were completely speechless. It took them close to 20 seconds just to process what had happened. Finally, one of them spoke and was like, "Why did you do that? You'd better go get it." We just laughed and said, "No, we won't. Think about the next time you're flashing people with that spotlight." After a few moments of incoherent shouting, one of them tried to get into Jay's face for some stupid reason, and he did not even make it out of his boat when Jay shoved him back into his seat hard enough that it broke. Neither one of the 2 guys were very big, and our girl buddy could have took them. Our buddy Jace told them to go park somewhere else for the night, because if we saw them again, we would kick their asses for real. So if any of you make it out that way again, get your snorkel out. There is an old rusted pistol at the bottom of the canal by the London Bridge Resort. You know, the execution on OP's part was pretty pro. Am I the only one who thinks that things could have gone the complete opposite way for him and his group though? I mean, approaching a bunch of idiots who are flashing lights in people's faces and pulling out weapons is not exactly the greatest idea in the world. I was on a business trip to a client in Philly, located just far enough away from the city to be a very expensive cab ride, but not so far as to warrant a rental car. I flew down, got an airport cab there, and was there for a week, being picked up and delivered from my hotel by taxi, and on Friday, the client called a cab for me to return to the airport. The driver of my cab was distracted, and not driving with safe attention to the road, so after a couple of miles, he hit a car. Fortunately, it was a slow speed collision, barely fast enough to deploy airbags, and everybody walked away unharmed. However, I had to wait for the cops to show up to give a statement, and I insisted the cab company send another car with another driver to take me to the airport. A couple of minutes into waiting, I realized the driver had left the meter running, which I insisted he stop. All told, I was there maybe an hour between waiting for the cop, talking to the cop, convincing the cop to not force me to go to the hospital, and waiting for a new cab to show up. So while I'd left early for my flight, by the time I got to the airport, I was gonna have to rush to make it. You'd think if you had a cab company and your driver hit a car with a passenger in the car, you'd see to it that they got to their destination safely and hope that they don't sue you. But not only did the second cabbie run the meter and ask me to pay, he also told me that the owner of the cab company had insisted that he get the fare from the first cab's meter, and insisted that I pay it too. He had the decency to look ashamed about all this, so I wasn't too nasty to him personally. I told him calmly that I recognized that the law allowed that I could be charged for the trip, although good business practice would dictate otherwise, but that if I hadn't been charged, I would have given him a good tip, while now he'd get no tip, as I was offended. I then told him to tell his boss what I was gonna do. You see, my client there was a major bank. It wasn't the Bank of America, but a few years later, it got bought by the Bank of America. So you can think of it as being that size. And they had people in to consult with them and to work with them often. And they'd always use this cab company for all the local travel. I would be going back there in 2 weeks, so I simply phoned up my client on Monday morning to let them know about the accident and asked them very nicely to please find another cab company for me to use when I would be there. My contact at the client was, of course, horrified, and made sure that they, their employees, and their consultants and contractors would never be using that cab company again. So, I'm a 17-year-old web developer who can make basic websites and stuff to earn money for video games. The job's pretty easy for the pay. I get picked up by some local bakery, so people could pre-order cakes and stuff online. I had agreed for 700 rupees, which is basically $10, which is insanely cheap even for India. But all I need is video game money, so I'm good with that. So when I'm done with the job, they need to purchase the domains and a server, which I explicitly told them, you pay me $10 and use another $10 to buy a domain and $5 to rent servers. The total is $25. They gave me $15 so I could set their stuff up. Once the website was fully operational, I asked for my money, but apparently they don't want to pay because if I wasn't hosting the server anyways, why do I need compensation? You know, because apparently time has no value. The thing is that I could still access their server as I had the credentials for the server. So I go home, log in, and make one tiny change. The way the website works is that there's a customer page which shows you your orders, and there's a page for the store owners to see orders, payments, etc. Here's what I did. I added a small inconspicuous may contain semen warning to all the product details. In the page where it shows you your order confirmations to the customers, some options are changed with semen, so semen frosting, by random. That is absolutely insane. Imagine browsing a website looking for cakes and seeing that in the product details, it says may contain semen. Oh my goodness. Pretty sweet revenge though. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /pro revenge. If you guys missed the last episode, a shady moving company messes with a military veteran and gets nuked from the planet. I'm kidding, they don't get nuked, but the revenge is pretty sweet, so check it out if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you. And I love you too, Steve-O, for editing my videos.
Please don't fire me.